and welcome to another episode of Female Guides Requested Podcast on Wednesday. This is your host, Ting Ting from Las Vegas. Our guest today is Selena Pang, another Vegas local, another Asian woman. I'm excited. I had so much fun chatting with Selena and dreaming together about novel possibilities of guiding. Selena grew up in Japan and started climbing in California in the 90s. According to her, it was an amazing era of climbing 30-something years ago. She raised her son as a single mom by being a dedicated yoga teacher and doing business in real estate in Austin, Texas. Only recently was she able to put climbing back in the center of her life. Around 4 years ago, she started exploring guiding as one of her career choices. She said that she still had lots to figure out in terms of how far she wanted to go on her AMGA track and how much physical load she realistically wanted to handle given her age and conditions. Her current goal on guiding is to mentor newer climbers, especially women, and she is constantly exploring ways to integrate climbing with yoga and, more importantly, other deeper aspects of life. Selena asked me once, how many people have said climbing has changed their lives? Well, quite many, including me, which means guiding can also have quite many applications besides chasing summits, advancing technical skills. Now let's enjoy Selena's rich life experience and wisdom together. Hi, Selena.
Hi, Ting Ting.
Thank you for letting me interview you. I have interviewed for women already, and they are all long-time guides.
Right.
So I think it will be pretty refreshing to give the listener a perspective for a newer guide.
Yes.
Is that correct? I call you a newer guide?
Yes, totally correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So how long have you been guiding? Actually, have you guided?
Yeah, so I started with my SPI cert back in 2019.
2019 is that
September?
what I was there
that
too?
one, yeah.
Okay.
With the affinity group. Remember with Elena and Tracy and Erica?
Yeah,
and
totally. That course, all the students, we have 4 instructors there.
Yeah,
cool.
It was great. I mean, how often do you get an all-star team, 4 of them,
Thank you.
Right? Like an SPI course, never. So that was really cool. So
wow, so that was 2019.
I think it was 2019.
It's definitely before COVID, I know.
It was before COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it might have been 2018.
Okay.
So that was when my, so somewhere, 2019 is when I got my SPI, and then COVID was 2020. So 2019 is when I started working for REI, for the Austin REI, for their outdoor program. And that's like all single pitch. And, Austin, we don't have any mountains. So we have these like, limestone kind of river cut crags that are short and they're pretty fun, but far from any mountains. So I started with REI. And then shortly after that, we went into the COVID furlough. Yes. So I got furloughed. And then in Austin, I can't speak for like the rest of the country, but in Austin, we were like on lockdown.
Okay.
So I was like cooped up at home with my son for the entire, pretty much I would say the entire 2020.
Yeah, I remember 2020.
So, and there was that thing about, hey, if you're in another state, do not travel, do not bring your COVID to us. So I did my best to, I trained on the hangboard and did like a home gym training with my son. But then that opportunity, the affinity program women's rock guide course came up in September.
In the same year, 2020?
2020.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got accepted for the program. So I did my rock guide course in 2020, September of 2020.
So when you took the rock guide course, were you an SPI already?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, I already had my SPI. So I feel like I've taken the course in 2018, maybe tested for the SPI in 2019.
Then why are you still taking the assessment? I thought once you take a higher course, then you don't have to retake the assessment.
Yeah, so I kind of talked to a couple of like people who run the guide services, and they're like, well, technically the apprentice rock guide is not a certification.
You need to be assistant rock guide,
right?
I need to sort out the information, otherwise I will give out false information myself. Yes.
Yeah. So and he was like, if I were you, I would go ahead and recert again and just have your SPI, because that is like a proper certification, whereas an apprentice rock guide is not.
I see. Yeah. So, rock guide course is mostly a course, right? There's no exam in there.
No exam. I mean, they have like movement assessment and one technical day, but otherwise it's not really a standalone certification on its own. So that was the recommendation I got, because I thought, that
makes sense. Yeah.
But also just to be on the safe side, I noticed that people like REI, they really like a certified SPI. So it kind of gives me opportunity to work with different people.
Definitely, and people get confused, especially like apprentice. Doesn't sound
exactly. Yeah.
Great. Even people confused about assistant rock guide, even though that's a higher cert, actually.
Right.
So you were an SPI since 2019.
Yeah.
And then you guided in REI.
I could have my dates wrong, but I think it was 2019.
But I can safely say that you are new.
Yes, I am very, very new.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think what's your endpoint? That's kind of my question. In your mind.
In my mind, so the rock guide course for me was so that when I'm instructing and sharing information, I'm on the modern systems, right? Because when I started climbing almost 30 years ago, equipment was different, the technology was different, right? Like people weren't testing.
Right.
And so I think at that point, climbers were still figuring out and adapting as new equipment came out.
Right. There's a lot of revolutionary gear change.
Yeah. So I felt like a lot of the things I learned when I first started climbing was a little bit outdated. And because I'm not a gearhead, I don't spend my time reading like climbing magazine and reading gear and technical system advancements. So I knew that at some point, if I were to instruct people, I needed to make sure that what I knew was acceptable to current safety standards. So the rock guide course was for that purpose. And, in Texas, where I've been for the last 20 years, I am one of the kind of the more older, been around the block climbers. And like I said, Texas doesn't have very many multi-pitch opportunities. So it's very hard to learn in Texas. So I was mentoring a lot of climbers. Just wanted to make sure what I was sharing was good. I was also noticing when I would travel out of Texas and go to other areas, because in Texas we have a very athletic, steep, kind of hard, steep, short climbing. It makes climbers strong, but it does not prepare them for easy technical.
So you mean the climbing was more bouldery?
more bouldery, steeper, but then you go to, multi-pitch areas in other parts. Like, let's say I go to Eldo and I see another Texas climber doing scary things, and I'm like, okay, like this kind of needs to change. And
so was that the reason that you took your first SPI course, was just like, okay, I've seen some scary things,
yes,
and then I'm also teaching people, maybe.
Yes. Exactly.
And then, so when you took the SPI course, you have this mindset of maybe mentoring some newer climbers.
Yeah.
But did you already think that you might do it as a job?
I didn't actually. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I'm probably very different from like the other female guides out
tell me
there.
about the story. Yes.
Okay, so I learned how to climb in California. So
Where
almost,
in California?
In Joshua Tree and Idlewild were like the places where I frequented a lot, and that's where I cut my teeth, right?
So
Learning.
you start as a track climber then?
I did start more or less as a trad climber. And then I married a fellow climber. We just spent all our time climbing. Wasn't planning on having kids, but ended up having a kid. I mean, ended up being the best decision ever, but that was
your
not
kid
my
is
plan.
Gorgeous. Yeah, adorable. Yes.
Thank you. Super not my plan, but I decided that I didn't want to raise my kid in LA. So
you used to live in LA?
I used to live in LA.
I see.
And that's where, I was climbing kind of in that area.
Right, because it's kind of close to Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So...
And then the reason you didn't want to raise your kid in LA, is it...
it's just, like the area that I was living in went from very... right? Like my next door neighbor was like a gardener, and my neighbor across the way was a retired military person. I mean, very blue collar.
Okay.
But during the time that I was there, it just really changed. The neighborhood really changed. Like all the entertainment studios started coming in, right? Like MTV came, the whatever studios came, and it just became the kind of place I didn't really want to raise my kid, right? Like you had kids, little babies, running around in very expensive Uggs.
All this vanity stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't want to raise my kid there. I had an opportunity to check out Austin in 1999, and I thought, oh, it's kind of a nice, kind of a low-key, slightly sleepy town, but with very cool, friendly people. And I was like, I would love to raise my kid here. So we ended up moving. Ended up getting divorced shortly after I moved. So I was a single mom. This is where I was getting to. I was a single mom.
For how long?
For 14 years.
Wow. You did really great.
Yeah. So, guiding was not even something I could consider. Right? Living in Austin, Texas.
Which there are probably not that many terrain.
Yeah, not many terrain. I had very little free time. I mean,
with raising a kid.
With raising a kid. Mm-hmm. I wasn't getting any financial support from my ex. So, right, like I was fully responsible for the kid and myself, right? So I had to... make sure that, right, like the finances were solid. I mean, really, I barely had time to train for myself and stay in climbing shape.
But you were still climbing.
I was still climbing, but like it was like I would drag my kid to the gym, and if I could get 1 hour in while he did his homework, that was as much as I was going to get, right?
I see. And wow. Then what did you do for your financial needs back then?
So I used to teach yoga full time. So I was teaching about 13 classes a week. When I got
You mean
divorced,
30?
13, 1-3
okay.
a week.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of like 2 classes a day on some days.
I see.
But I was teaching probably about 6 days a week, yoga 6 days a week.
Wow.
Which worked out really well. And then at the same time, I used to work for this lovely woman who owned a soft kitchen goods company. And I was like, she used to call me her utility knife, because like I would do everything from warehouse management to sewing samples to cutting patterns. I used to be in fashion back in LA.
Ooh.
So I did all of these things. But then in 2016, I got super, super sick and like bedridden and a fever for like an entire year. I didn't know this till later, but I got Lyme's disease.
Yeah, you mentioned.
Super sick. So when that happened, I couldn't really teach as many yoga classes as I was teaching, and I certainly couldn't work for this woman because, you know, I was a lot of times, like kind of working at home and then going to the warehouse after I dropped my kid off at school and juggling a million things. So that's when I got into real estate. Oh. And I somehow managed to make an all right living in real estate, working as minimally as possible because I was bedridden.
And Austin was booming.
Yeah. So I got lucky there. Mm-hmm. So for the rest of my time in Austin, I taught yoga every day and did real estate. So that's how, you know, financially I managed. And I told myself that as soon as my kid went off to college, I would move to a place closer to great climbing. So here I am in Vegas. Yeah. But that was a long road and a lot of planning.
Wow. So right now, you still teach yoga?
I do. I teach a couple of classes at the local yoga studio. So I teach here Tuesday, Thursday evenings. And then, you know, during season, I've been guiding like about 2 days a week.
2 days a week, you mean doing Red Rock season?
Doing Red Rock season, yeah. So, and then the rest of the time I'm trying to personally climb, right? Because that is my purpose for moving to Red Rock, was not to like be working so hard, but to get to climb after 20 years of raising a kid. I think I owe myself that, finally.
I see.
Yeah.
So right now you're live in Vegas, more personal climbing, some yoga teaching, and some guiding.
Yes, yeah.
So your outlook for guiding is more part-time?
Part-time, because what I moved here for was to try to prepare for the advanced rock guide. Right? And this is what I kind of found out last season, because that was the first season I was guiding in Red Rock, right? Because I just arrived last year to Red Rock, or to Vegas, is that like when you guide, you don't really stay in shape.
That's true. Yes.
Right. Well, the requirements for the advanced rock guide is, right, there are certain movement standards, and you don't want to be sketching on them.
Well, you certainly exist a movement standard for, I mean, you climb really well. So I won't say that I worry about you on the movement.
Yeah, but you also, I don't know if you know this, but I went through 2 shoulder surgeries in the last 4 years. So I was also coming back from that. Right. And so that really messed with my head. I was certainly not going to be able to prepare for the advanced rock guide in Austin because we have no multi-pitch. So I was like, okay, like, even if it's just for 3 or 4 years, I need to move somewhere where it's accessible, where I can kind of still teach yoga, guide, but personally work on my, you know, progression of my rock guide life, guiding life.
Yes.
So balancing that has been kind of a challenge.
So you plan to guide on multi-pitch terrain then?
Yes.
Okay.
But, I'm also 53, so I don't want to be having these 12-hour days.
Well, you can do some 8-hour days.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I could do 8-hour days, but I also couldn't do, 4 days in a row of 8-hour days. If I had 2 days in a row.
It is tough.
2 days in a row, that's probably my physical limit if I wanted to save something for my personal fitness and my personal climbing and my personal, comeback from my 2 shoulder surgeries. So it's been a lot.
I see. And do you mind ask you, because I got here in Red Rock full time, so I certainly, especially during the peak season, I might work 20 plus days a month.
Yeah.
And so for you right now, your current situation, is that financial feasible for you to teach yoga, guide part-time?
Yeah. So, in all honesty, the guiding makes such little money that I don't even consider that like a viable way of earning a living with the level of fitness and stamina I have as a 53-year-old woman.
Then, if that's the case, why don't you not guide, but just do, say, teaching yoga and just focus on your personal climbing? Then, what did you get from guiding?
So, here is my why for pursuing, the climbing education. It was less for guiding and making a living that way. It was more for being able to share the knowledge safely among my community. And, I think I speak from a place of, being a woman climber. And, I psych myself out a lot because when I see people do certain things, it's like, well, yeah, I've been climbing for a long time and I wouldn't do it this way, but maybe they know something I don't know. Instead of being very secure in, ooh, I'm not okay with that, or, oh, wow, that is an elegant system and I really appreciate that, and to have that kind of knowledge was very important, but also to keep other women safe is like my why, right? Because for a lot of women, I think they come into climbing because of their partners or because of, they kind of get brought into the world of climbing, fall in love with climbing, but I find a lot of cases where they don't really take the initiative to learn to be safe on their own because, they depend on the other partner to kind of, learn about the gear and to know everything. And that is not really a safe way to climb. Because if you can't look at other people's system and tell if it's safe or if you can't speak up or if you don't know enough information to speak up, it's kind of dangerous.
That's interesting. So because you certainly take the initiative to be in your mind safer, so you can also learn the modern knowledge to show, say, your fellow climbers how to be safe. So what gave you the courage to be taking the initiative, if you feel like a lot of women not doing that? And you also mentioned that you psych yourself out a lot too.
Yeah. So for me, I started climbing at a very different time, right? Think about 25 plus years ago. The climbing community was very small.
True.
Everybody knew everybody. I feel like it was much more inclusive than today.
Oh,
because
okay.
because I remember when I started climbing, there were so few women who climb that if you were a woman climber, people swooped in to like take you climbing. But not only did they like swoop in to take me climbing, but they schooled me on everything. Like I followed pitches after pitches of I went out every weekend. The people who took me climbing, like, kind of not only took me climbing to take me climbing, but they like kind of taught me what they knew. They taught me the kind of the culture, the etiquette. There was a lot, right?
So they also took the role of mentoring.
Absolutely, totally. And so I came into climbing, I think, at a time where, oddly, the women who, stepped into climbing, stepped into it from a much more empowered and with the intention of being like strong and independent climbers on their own. So I mean, like a lot of the women that I climbed with were not. They took initiative. They all led on trad gear, and they all went out and did stuff. And then I noticed that somewhere along the line, as climbing became like more popular and more, it was a little bit of a self-selecting group back then, because the women who chose to climb were not your very average athletes. Do you know what I'm saying?
Let me try to paraphrase that thing, see what I understand. So you mean the back then, well, we all know the back then, there were fewer women climb.
Yeah.
So if they chose to climb, they kind of need to have a certain personality trait in them.
Right.
So they needed to take initiatives and be bold.
Right.
And maybe in the meantime, it's like, okay, then I can lead, I can learn everything.
Yeah.
But as the climbing population exploded, people came in for different reasons.
Correct.
So a lot of time people just say, I'm coming because my friend wants to do it.
Right.
But I don't really need it to know everything.
Correct. Yeah. Very different culture. Like the women who chose to climb back then chose to climb.
So they needed to equip themselves with knowledge.
Correct. Whereas I think the people who a lot of times happen upon climbing today, happened upon climbing because there was a beautiful gym that got built, and, they joined for the yoga and the fitness facility, and also decided to dabble in climbing, and then fell in love with the movement, and they stayed gym climbers for a long time. And in that environment, you really don't need to know a lot to still be able to enjoy climbing. And I think that's also wonderful.
It is. I love the movement part of climbing for sure.
Yeah, because it's vertical dancing, and it's an area where women do really well, right? You don't have to be a certain body type, or you don't necessarily even have to be that athletic to really enjoy the movements of climbing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me say this. So it's fine if they want to stay in the gym for their whole climbing career, but some of them venture outside. And you've seen some of them.
Right.
And then you probably just like, oh, maybe it would be nice. They learn a little bit of being outside.
Right. Yeah. So that's the role that I've kind of stepped into in my local climbing. Well, it's not even local anymore. When I was in Austin. Yeah,
I remember you share on your Facebook, Texas Crusher. Is that how you call it?
Yeah. So Texas Lady Crusher. The founder of Texas Lady Crusher, Emily Hernandez, and I kind of met one day at a climbing gym in South Austin that no longer exists. And back then, Texas Lady Crushers didn't exist. But she also found that she would like to create like a safe community where women can ask questions and learn and whatnot, I started helping out with the Texas Lady Crushers, taking people out. We won't call it guiding because I was at that point not certified, but as probably one of the more experienced climbers in Austin, women climbers in Austin at that time, it was a very enjoyable role for me, and it just made me feel so good to see women who were confident outside and who knew they could keep themselves safe and who knew that, like, right, like there are no stupid questions. Because let's face it, like in today's climbing culture, right, it's still very male dominated. We have so many more women climbers and so many more women crushers these days, but it's still very male dominated. In some places, it's very intimidating, right? Or you just get a little bit of that bro dude attitude that, you know, is a really hard environment to have to constantly manage.
The bro talks, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Emily created the Texas Lady Crushers as a place where women can get together and climb together in a safe environment. You know, my intention still is, you know, even as I further my education,
AMGA, yeah,
I would still go back to Texas and be involved with them and with other, you know, women organizations. So, you know, another guiding company that I've been working with is She Moves Mountains.
Yes.
That's been really lovely.
Yeah, I saw that you worked with them in Joshua Tree recently.
Yeah.
Right. So
and it was so fun. It's amazing. It's amazing because one of my memorable weekends guiding for them was guiding for the Latino outdoor events that they had. It was like a 3-day climbing weekend. A lot of the women who attended this weekend, I believe it was scholarship based. So the people who came on that trip did not have to pay.
Oh, okay.
Right? So a lot of these women had, number one, never camped, had never set up a tent, let alone climb and touch rock. And, you know, to be involved in a weekend like that just reminds me of kind of the magic of like the outdoors, the magic of climbing and moving your body on rock, right? You're dancing on rock, and the magic of community. You know, it was just so sweet. And one of the things I love about working with women is, and, you know, maybe this is not all women, but I notice this in general, is that they tend to be very nurturing and very supportive. So maybe less competitive. Maybe you're on the rock and you're feeling scared and you can say, hey, I'm scared. And the women, you know, there is nobody that says, stop sucking, climb harder. Even as a joke that's sometimes not funny. And sometimes, most of the time, it's not even a joke, right?
Right, sure. I remember the first time I led and I have a male partner. Mm-hmm. And I was really scared because that was my first lead. And I was like so scared. And then he said, well, you got 3 good pieces below you. That's all he said.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, was that supposed to be encouragement?
Right.
Yeah. I totally understand. And I also can see that it seems like women's group is kind of important for you.
Yes.
And you even see, Gal, well, you took affinity programs from the AMGA from the get-go, right? Mm-hmm. Like very first course. Have you ever stepped in a non-affinity program?
Actually, I have. My first SPI course that I took with Elena was a mixed course. And that was lovely. Like I really enjoyed it.
And how many, what was the ratio? Do you remember? What was the ratio of male participants and women participants?
I'm going to say a little bit more male than female. I think that particular group had more women than normal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I know.
So I want to say maybe it might have been like 70-30.
That's nice.
Yeah. No, it was great.
Because I think for Elena, she typically attract women too.
Yeah.
Because I have sat on some other SPI courses that's ran by male instructors, and definitely the ratio is pretty screwed.
Yeah. So yeah, that was cool. But of course, right, SPI course is what? Is it 3 days? Was it 3 days?
It is 3 days.
3 days. It's not 10 days.
Okay.
Right? The Rock Guide course is 10 hard days of labor.
Okay. Yeah. So handing out 10 days with all dudes. And well, maybe dude is not the best word, but can be stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Especially as a 53-year-old woman, or, you know, when I took the Rock Guide course, I was 51.
So, maybe how did that make you feel? Because I talked to Tracy Martin on the very first episode.
Yeah.
She told me when she was certified, she was 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because she looked super young.
Yeah.
So it seems like, because you also share some age-related posts on your Facebook. Seems like it's in your mind.
Yes, yeah.
How does that affect you?
I
mean, you are totally competent. You move well. You speak well. So I'm just curious.
I think the reality of 53 is that I don't have the same stamina as I did in my 20s or my 30s.
Not like
my
40s, body, boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like in my 20s and my 30s, I kind of really didn't need sleep. You know, I could just go, right? Like I could physically push, and it didn't faze me. At 53, and, you know, kind of also managing, right? Like Lyme's disease leaves a very long-term effect on the body. So my 40s was kind of learning to manage Lyme's. And then
so it just stay with you, or
it kind of stays with you. So I can't ever let myself get really tired, because then it triggers a very long episode of fatigue, chronic fatigue, that will put me in bed.
Watch that line.
I need to really be careful. I can kind of tell when it starts coming on, because I start getting a little bit like dizzy and vertigo-y. And then even when I sleep, I have a bit of a vertigo. And that's when I know, like, okay, I've pushed too far, scale everything back. So the reality of 53 and managing that is that physically I have to be very careful. I also have to be very honest about how much my body is capable of being pushed, right? So, yeah, if I was in my 20s and my 30s and I didn't have a kiddo, I probably would have been guiding. Like, I did love being outside and love climbing that much that was probably the course I would have taken. But, you know, I'm still figuring it out, because, you know, guiding is new for me. I think my realistic goal is moving more towards instruction and less towards guiding, right? But the reality is, like, none of that instruction is really that good unless you actually do it.
Yeah, you kind of have to. You can't not having experience and expect to be a good instructor.
Right. You can't be a theoretical.
No.
Right? So that's why, like, well, and also when I do guide outside, I do love taking people outside. It's just that I can't do it 5 days a week like a lot of the young guides do.
I mean, it is challenging. Even I can tell you, even for younger guys, I talk with them 20-something, early 30s. working that much in a row is still very exhausting.
It's exhausting.
So just, rest assured, it's not just for older people.
Yeah. Well, and, I don't take the responsibility of guiding lightly because you have someone else's life in your hands.
Yeah,
so,
risk management is what we manage.
Yeah, so it's a very... very heavy job. It's rewarding, it's fun, but it's also very heavy, and I'm still learning to balance that, right? But it's important for me to continue to guide, to keep everything relevant, to keep what I'm learning relevant, and also because it's my opportunity to, right, like work in those women's group and see why outdoor education is important, to see why I still love this sport, because I get to like experience someone fall in love with climbing or the outdoors for the first time. And so it always keeps me in this state of like beginners, I won't say beginner's mind, but beginner's appreciation.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I would say that it's very nice to be reminded what it was like to be new.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah. And so coming back to the women's program.
Yes.
So, I mean, I didn't have my chance to take all women courses myself. So I'm curious because you took the women's SPI. You didn't, your assessment, that was not the women's only assessment.
I took it twice because I actually failed my first SPI
with
Elena, but I knew I was going to.
Right.
It was my first SPI class, and I decided to take the SPI exam right after that first, 5 days straight.
First.
And I told Elena, I said, look, I know I'm not going to do well, but I kind of want to see what
is it like.
Right. Because at that point, and it was, I don't know why I did not think about this. It was really dumb of me. But I had never been guided. I have never been in a climbing class.
Okay.
Right? So it's like a yoga student coming to yoga teacher training saying, I want to be a yoga teacher without ever having taken a yoga class. That's exactly what I was doing in climbing.
Oh, okay.
Right? But I've been climbing recreationally for 20 years prior to that. I've never been guided. I've never spent money on, I bought books, right? But I've never taken clinics. I mean, climbing festival really wasn't a thing back then because there weren't enough climbers to have festivals. So it was my first foray into investing my money in climbing education. And once I did that, I realized how valuable and important it was.
Bingo!
Yeah! But when you're young and money is tight, it's hard to know that the value that real training brings.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. You always juggle time, money, and stuff. So you got to choose what's best for you at that certain point.
Yeah, right. And when I was climbing a lot, I didn't really have a lot of money to burn. So I certainly wasn't going to hire a guide for a few $100s a day to teach me.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have. Now I know it would have been money well spent, but I didn't.
I would say so. It's like, if I would say if people commit climbing for a long term, then maybe it's actually a very good money to spend.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually want to talk a little bit more about the affinity programs. I'm just kind of curious about your experience because I never myself, I'm always taking the courses exam in a very male-dominated ratio.
Yeah.
So you definitely seek that out, and how was that experience for you? Was that really helpful to taking courses and exam with a bunch of women together, all women?
It's hard to say because unlike the SPI, the rock guide course I've only taken once, and I've only taken it with women, right? So I can't compare.
Yeah. So how about you just tell me your experience in those courses?
The experience I had is a little bit different because it was a COVID COVID, we were the first course to get run by the AMGA.
I remember you all wear masks and
everything,
right? It was hard.
Brutal. It was like Boulder, the entire western region was on fire. There was like so much fire going on in the Boulder area. It was smoky. We had to wear a mask the entire 10 days, and it was really hot that summer. So physically, it was a very hard course, right? Because we were just hot and smoky and masked the whole time. Because of that, I am so glad it was with a lot of other women. One thing I do find when I climb with men is that, right, I'm shorter, my legs are shorter, I'm probably a good 60 pounds, I weigh 60 pounds less than a lot of my male climbing friends. So, right, me carrying a pack and trying to move with it is a significantly bigger proportion of my body weight. So I do feel like I'm always trying to like walk fast and, my legs are moving like,
when they have a shorter stride.
Yeah. So there's a part of me when I'm with men, I'm always trying to keep up. I don't complain about it, but I am. That's the reality. I think with working with people of like similar size kind of makes a difference.
Oh, I didn't even think about the size, similar size, because usually when people sharing with their all women course, they all talking about how supportive it is, and you have shared experience, and they talk about the size.
Even doing stuff like rock rescue drill.
Oh, you don't have to haul a heavy person.
So that isn't the reason why I took it, but it really does make a difference, right?
Definitely. I remember when I did my drill, the 45-minute, right now 15-minute, because they changed the drill.
Right.
They paired me with a lighter guy because that was the only option they could find.
Yeah. I definitely do feel like women are more supportive. And so there's maybe less of that competitive edge and more of that supportive, environment. And so that was really important to me because really for the rock guide course with the conditions we were in, and I hadn't been climbing because I was in lockdown, so I'm not in my usual shape. I was working really hard, physically hard for 10 days. So being in a supportive environment made a world of difference. If every day, really by like day 5, it was only halfway through and it felt like, oh my gosh, I am so tired and I still am only halfway through. Mm-hmm. Right? So like being in a supportive environment when you're feeling that way makes a
definitely
whole world
and
of difference.
How were the instructors? Were they all women?
They were all women. So
nice.
We had Karen Buckle, Margaret Wheeler, and Erica Engel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I somehow bumped into this supposedly women's rock guide course in Red Rock last fall. Mm-hmm. It was one male instructor. I was like, well, why are you here? But they said they couldn't find enough women instructor for that course.
Yeah.
So,
but I think right that points to the kind of the challenge in climbing is that there are so few women and so few women instructors, and
definitely,
how do you shift that, right? Like you kind of need we need to shift that by offering safe spaces for women to learn.
Definitely. And I think there are more and more female guys now. It's gonna take a little bit time.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take a long time. And I also am noticing a little bit more of that. The women who have been guiding are getting out of guiding because they're not able to make a living, or they want to start a family, or that's a huge challenge with women. If you want kids, how are you going to continue to guide, right?
I was just talking with Miranda, who just had, Miranda, the third episode. So she just had a kid last year. So, and she loved guiding.
Right.
So she's right now switching when the kiddo is still young to more instructing. So not doing a long multi-pitch that she has to be out all day, because she still has to milk the kid and stuff.
It's a lot of moving parts to juggle as a female guide. Right?
Yeah.
And now, like, I don't have to worry about that because my kid is already
an adult
out of the house. But, I have other challenges like age.
Yes. So, let me look at my notes. So what's your plan for your next step then? I mean, on the AMGA track. You're talking about the advanced rock guide course. Did you sign up for one already?
I was going to sign up. Well, I was intending on taking the September
one in Red Rock.
I was really hoping to get some amount of scholarship. I did not get any scholarship in the last round that I
for the rock guide course. I thought the rock guide course was sponsored by the North Face. No.
Oh, the rock guide course was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the first rock guide course. But we still have to come up with, right. It's not that the entire tuition is not, only part of it is.
Right.
So I think my current plan, I was going to take it this September, but I think I'm going to put a pause on that, apply for the next round of scholarship coming up in October, see if I can secure some funding for the Advanced Rock Guide.
Right now, how much is the Advanced Rock Guide?
$4,300. For the September 2-1 ratio.
43 for 8 days? 6 days? Sorry.
It is 8.
8 day with 2-to-1 ratio. Okay, 43. Yeah, that's
it's a lot.
It's
right?
a big sum of money for
especially for someone like me that isn't right. Like, my guiding years are not long.
So you're thinking about whether the investment would pay off.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah. And especially because, I still want to continue to mentor and maybe even volunteer my time to, instruction and education. And so, I can do that currently without necessarily having the Advanced Rock Guide. The Advanced Rock Guide just puts me, within the scope of practice when I do guide
on the multi-pitch terrain.
Yeah, because with my apprentice, I can guide, is it 4 pitches or 600 feet?
I don't actually
Something
know.
like that.
I don't know whether you need to be under supervision.
For the 4 pitches or up to 600 feet, I can guide on my own. So I could go guide, Johnny Vegas or Laudaball Wall or right. I could still do a fair amount of short multi-pitch, but I couldn't go and guide, the Dark Shadows full. Right, which is well within my comfortable guiding.
Right.
But I would not be within the scope of practice for Dark Shadows. So
so you still the Advanced Rock Guide course still in the picture, because you also get tested on the rescue.
Yes. So
which is important, even though I never want to use it. But you kind of need to have that skill.
Yeah, so I'm preparing for that. I'm going to go ahead, just because I didn't get the scholarship this last round, I'm going to try to apply for the one coming up in October and see if I can secure a little bit. And then if I can, I'll take it in the spring.
I see.
Advanced Rock Guide in spring.
So when you apply for the scholarship, I know that they have women's scholarship. Have you tried the BIPOC scholarship too?
Yeah, that's the scholarship I didn't get this last round.
I see. Yeah.
So I'm applying to anything and everything I can.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit out of the loop of a scholarship because I'm not taking courses right now. And how about, so you think you might have planned to even be a full cert rock guide then?
Ooh, I don't know about that. I mean,
who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah,
who knows?
I
but
just wait and see, right?
Yeah. I don't have a necessity for it. Mm-hmm. You know, I suppose that if I did that, it opens up a lot of other opportunities, like, right, on the education side, like being able to offer, SPI courses. Do I want to do that?
Well,
not really.
I think that as once you pass the advanced rock guide, you will become an assistant rock guide.
Right.
Then you can be an SPI instructor. Provider actually. So you don't need to be a full cert rock guide in order to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the way the money part of it works out, I probably won't go for the full. And I say that now, and I might change my mind in like 2 years. I don't know.
Right. I mean, you never know, right? So things can change and stuff. So how about along the way, did you have just particularly, I know that you have quite a lot of mentors on your climbing career because people took you under their wings.
Right.
How about on this guiding track, like becoming a guide? Have you met anybody that mentor you a little bit about, being a guy, you need to be like this, and then train on like team of 3 and that type of thing?
I have. So I've actually, when Dale comes through, I typically like to kind of hire him for a day.
I see.
To brush up on things that I feel are subpar. But otherwise, I just get out there and I just kind of practice on friends.
Right.
Practice on,
And did you, because you are right now in Vegas, there's a lot of people coming through train.
That's right.
Have you contact them and network with them to train together?
Yes. So there's a constant stream of people who are coming through to take their rock guide course, to train for their rock guide course. So I'm always in touch with peers who are...
And how did you manage to do that? Because some people might wonder how they can connect with other peers to train.
So it's actually been pretty easy. I think just having...
It just happened organically, maybe?
It happened very organically for me, just because I've been kind of coming to Red Rock and climbing for a little while, so, right, the people who come through every season is the same, or right, you get the same people who are going to be coming through. And so typically around the season is like, hey, are you going to be there? Oh, I'll be here from this date. Okay, well, let's coordinate.
Right. And so then do you mind, because sometimes people come through and then they will ask me, but I'm always working.
Right.
So do you mind I ask you, not necessarily you per se, but help them to connect with some...
Oh, absolutely. Okay. And I do that a lot too, because a lot of times when I'm not available, I'll connect, people with others who are looking.
Because I think that would be really helpful. Yeah. But I just I can't spare a day. I mean, for me, I kind of need to work. Right. So, great. And I'm actually curious about a little bit about your background. So you, obviously people can see. So, Asian.
I'm Asian.
Yeah. Probably people can judge from the name, your last name and everything. So were you born and raised in the States?
I was born in Santa Monica, California. But I was raised in Japan. So when I was 2 months old, my parents decided to go back to Japan. They're not Japanese, actually. They're Chinese.
Okay.
But they left Japan because it was in the 60s during the Red Scare. And they thought they were going to get booted out of Japan. And so they were we're just going to go ahead and move to California and kind of start over. And then they heard from the Japanese government that they were getting granted Japanese citizenship.
Oh.
When that happened, they moved back. At that point, I was only like 2 or 3 months old. So I grew up in Japan.
Until when?
Until I graduated high school.
Wow.
So I graduated high school and then moved back to California. Yep.
Do you still speak any dialect of Chinese then?
No, I've never spoken Chinese.
So your family, do they speak?
They speak Chinese.
Oh, okay.
My dad speaks Cantonese. My mom speaks Mandarin.
But they never taught you?
No.
Interesting.
Because
okay.
it's different times. I was a girl, and they were like, well, you're going to pick up whatever language whoever you marry to, you're going to be given away. So
it's interesting
concept.
We're
not going to bother teaching you Chinese. My brother speaks Chinese, though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the brother
speaks Cantonese.
Okay.
And all right, Mandarin.
I see. So you speak Japanese, obviously English. So.
Yes, that's
okay.
And I used to speak all right French, but I haven't used it in a long time. So
yeah, that's interesting that the parents that they didn't teach you any Mandarin or Cantonese.
I think I'm that tail generation of Chinese families where girls kind of were not valued. Right? Because
yes,
I think that is not true today. As much,
yes, I would say. Depends on which family they...
Right.
Yes.
But, like as an example, my mom has 4 sisters. Well, why do they have 4 sisters? It's not because they wanted a big family.
Because they want a son eventually, right?
Exactly. They were trying for a son and kept having daughters. And then at some point they gave up and quit.
Well, yeah, okay. And then when did you move back to the States?
1987. I moved to LA for college.
For college, yeah.
Yes.
And so did the whole family move back?
No,
or
just
you?
I left Japan. And so my entire family is in Japan.
I see.
Yeah.
So family still in Japan. You alone came back to.
My brother at that time, he's 2 years older, and he was also in college in California.
I see.
So my father gave me the choice of either, you go to California and go to school with your brother and live with your brother, or you can stay in Japan and continue to live with us till we marry you off.
Okay. I guess if I were you, I chose to come to the United States.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Was that your rationale too?
That was
Just like,
and they gave me 4 years. My dad's like, I'm going to give you 4 years to finish your degree.
And then get married?
And come back to
okay.
Japan and get married or whatever.
Wow. Your family quite traditional.
Very traditional. Very traditional. I mean, like, my father is unusual in that he holds on to that old tradition, but is also a little bit progressive in some ways, right?
And did you mind asking you that, being a single mom and also climbing?
It was just, they kind of gave up on me. Fortunately, they gave up on trying to make me like a normally acceptable Asian daughter, right? Because by the time I didn't, I think this is a Japanese thing. I don't know if this is a Chinese thing, but in Japan they say a woman is like a Christmas cake. Because up to 24, you're desirable. At 25, you're like, okay, like, this is it. And 26, you're like a day-old Christmas cake.
Wow. That's very interesting. I mean, in the culture I came from, it's kind of similar. I mean, my mom certainly wanted me to get very good education and everything, but she always worried about who and when I'm gonna get married.
Right.
Once I pass a cutoff age,
Yes.
as if like I have no value if I don't get married.
Right. That was very much like my family. So when I was not married by 30, I was kind of a lost cause to them. And they were like, at this point, you know what? You're far away in the U.S. We're just,
pretend that you're not my daughter is.
It wasn't that severe.
Okay.
But they were at least like, we kind of gave up on you. Just do what you want to do, and they kind of gave up. And then the thing is when I got divorced, it was like, oh my god. It was
like the end of the world, right?
It was. And then it's like, well, not only am I divorced, but now I'm like single mom, and not realizing that in the US, that's kind of
it was not like
a big
normal,
deal,
right?
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, sure, it's challenging in some ways.
It's definitely challenging. You have to raise a kid on your own.
Yeah, but at the same time, like raising my son in Austin as a single mom has been very happy years. I had a great time. I would much rather be a single mom in Austin, Texas than
and the traditionally because of the kids, so you stay in the marriage, that kind of thing.
No, can't do that. So I had a really happy single mom life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how do they see you climbing then? Or were they just like, I don't care because I already gave up on my daughter?
I think for a long time, I did not lie about climbing, but for a long time, I think they thought I hiked.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I didn't, that was okay.
I mean, you have to hike to the crag anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't really lying. And they weren't really wanting to know more.
I see.
And that was okay. I think now they know that I climb. And so now every time I go home, they're like, oh, isn't it time you stop climbing? Every time I leave Japan, oh, please be really careful. It kind of worries them too much. And
because in Japan, it's also quite big of climbing culture, right? At least
recently,
okay.
Right? That's a recent thing. Japan's always had a very
mountaineering culture,
very established mountaineering culture, but not necessarily technical rock climbing culture.
I see.
And that's relatively new. I mean, right when Yuji Hirayama started climbing, that was kind of like the very beginning of Japanese climbing, and it still didn't pick up for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember watching some documentary of Yuji talking about all the time when he started climbing, people just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, they had no idea. And he was such a pioneer.
Right.
I mean, but nobody understood what he was doing. Yeah. No wonder he had to move to France and just do his own thing.
Yeah,
right?
But definitely right now, Japanese climbers are this strong force on a lot of...
Yeah, and it's so fun. I love it because when I go back to Japan, I get to hang out in Japanese gyms. And I think the Japanese, right, like the physique and their work mentality really, really helps with the climbing. Because they are so nerdy and so focused, and they really love and pick up on little techniques. Right. And when they get into something, they really get into it.
Because Japanese culture really value... You do this one thing really well, right? I forgot the term. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But that's in their culture.
Yeah.
All right. So be like super geeky about just doing one particular thing super well.
And then you see all these, what's really fun for me is, right, like Japan is still... As far as women's movement, it's very behind. So, but in the climbing world, there are crushers, 9-year-old little girls who just dominate. I mean, it is insane how good they are. Mm-hmm. And so that to me makes me feel really good.
Kind of inspiring too, because I'm Asian. I was like, I can be climbing really well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's so good, especially in contrast to, right, like the rest of Japanese culture where women are kind of still not considered equal. And, you know, even in the workplace, it's hard to be a woman in Japan.
That kind of maybe reminded me, did your parents wanted you to go to this bridal whatever school that in Japan, that's what I heard, that then prepare you to be a proper bride or something?
No.
Okay.
They like, well, there was I think like, they tried to set me up, you know, like Japan
blind
is,
day and stuff.
Japan is big on like setting families up,
arranged marriage,
yes. So they kind of had ideas of that, but I was just not having it. And I was, you know, for Japanese standards, I was considered a little bit wild and too independent. So I think they had a really hard time with that.
So probably here, I mean, in the United States, suits you a little better, huh?
Much better, yeah. It's so much easier. It's very hard for me to be in Japan. And in Japan, I feel like I can't be myself. And when I am myself, people think I'm a complete freak.
And how about your identity here in the United States, in the climbing? I mean, when I just started climbing, well, it was not even as long as you. I think I started climbing about 14 years ago. And I found very few Asians.
Yeah.
And does that affect you, your culture, ethnic identity in the climbing community?
So not really. I think more newer climbers have more issues with that because, again, when I started climbing, like climbing was so fringe that everybody was kind of like the different. So it kind of almost didn't matter that you were a girl.
I see. Or Asian or girl.
Or Asian. Like, as far as I know, I have not had any problems being a female Asian climber. I see more issues today than I see back then.
So what kind of issues do you see today?
I had, you know, I think in general, like when I show up, people, you know, will say, oh, like the warm-ups, the 5/8 are right there. You know, that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think I just don't look really fierce, you know, which is fine. I don't.
Yeah, which is fine. But why would people even bother to tell you, offer the information?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if my age has something to do with it, right? Because I clearly am not like young. I don't think I look my age, but I don't think I look young. I feel like there is more of that weird bro culture in climbing today.
Wow. I guess when I started climbing, I already knew about the bro culture. I even know how to do the bro talks.
Yes, but I think you came into climbing when that was
the norm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right?
I see. Yeah, because it's obviously it's hard for me to imagine what 20 plus years ago was like.
There was no, I mean, people were so, I will say they were just so quirky and such unusual people. And I have the fondest memory of those people and those times. And they were just so crazy and just so original.
I see.
Everybody was just like very much their own character.
So it's kind of nice that you have those memories, right?
It was great.
So you're just like, maybe we can right now pick up those atmosphere or something.
Yeah, I think having that experience kind of makes me believe that it's possible. It's become a little bit more toxic of late, but I think having seen that, I know that it's entirely possible that men and women and people can coexist in the outdoor space and have fun with each other. And
right. So you start at the time that climbing is fun, the community was fun.
Yeah.
That's
it was
tiny.
Like the community was really
awesome
small.
combo.
Yeah, it was so good.
Because
so
I
good.
think I started in the community, not that, obviously I met a lot of supportive people for sure, but there's still some toxics in the community. But I love climbing, so I just kind of punch through. Sometimes I feel those obstacles.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if the community is like pretty safe and supportive all the way.
Yeah. Well, I told you about the dinner.
The dinner. Okay.
Right?
The guys' dinner.
The guys' dinner, and I was like the only female guide present at that dinner. Mm-hmm. And nobody tried to talk to me. I was trying to kind of be, like in the conversation. And at some point, I had to like, two of the guides brought their partners. Right. So I was like, hey, can you move so that I can go sit with the two ladies? You know, and I went to the end of the table, had a lovely time, but that I feel like is the current culture of being a minority in this.
Interesting. And that kind of remind me that I bumped into you last October during the annual meeting. Was that your first annual meeting of the AMGA?
Yeah, I've never been to one.
And that was obviously you saw a lot of men.
Yes, I did.
How was the atmosphere for you? Atmosphere for you? Like, did you have to do some broad talk, or you felt that you could comfortably talk with people?
The few people that I did talk to, I didn't feel like I needed to do the bro talk. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that I felt completely comfortable and that it would be an event I look forward to going to. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know that I would go back again.
Right.
But you know, when I did go, my primary purpose for going was, they offer those clinics, and I kind of wanted to attend. I was already in Vegas, and I wanted to brush up on like rescue skills and stuff. So I had a reason for being there.
For the clinics.
For the clinics. I really went for the clinics.
Not for, say, socializing.
Not for socializing.
I see.
Yeah. But I also met a couple of people I knew that I got to catch up with, which was really fun.
Nice.
And then I got to meet a few people that, you know, I had met for the first time there, and we like exchanged information on how to find each other if we were... if I was going to Yosemite or they were going to come through here.
Nice.
So it was, like I'm glad I went. Mm-hmm. Would I go every year? Probably not.
Right. I see. Yeah, I mean, I went there a few times, the annual meetings. And I kind of can see why. You're just like, I don't know, it seems... It's not like people are not nice. They are nice.
Right.
But somehow
I want to hear what you think about it.
It's just overwhelmingly male.
Yes.
Guys.
Yeah.
And so for me, so I have this imposter syndrome that because I didn't speak English natively, I didn't grow up here, so I always find it a little bit awkward for me to, in a very big party-ish thing, to strike a conversation with people. I don't know how small talk. That's kind of my thing.
Yes. Because small talk is so cultural.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then if like guiding, I'm super comfortable asking questions because it's more like a very small group.
Right.
So I feel it's very comfortable to just chit chat.
Right.
But in the big group, I just like, oh, what's the icebreaker and what's a normal topic to ask? And that I feel very awkward.
Yeah.
So it's always hard for me in that environment. And given that all this people I don't even know their background, so it's extremely hard for me. So I'm always very quiet during that type of event. Yeah. But then I wasn't sure that's because me culturally, because I wasn't very comfortable small talking in that environment, or because the overwhelmingly male and women ratio, and I'm obviously one of the very few Asians there.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. I have a feeling that if there were more women, it would be more comfortable.
It could be.
Right? Because like really, okay, so here's the thing. When I was meeting new people, I was meeting other women.
I see.
Yeah, and it was just so fun talking to them. Right, and exchanging information and trying to keep in touch and all of that.
And then I think for, say, small talking, which is, I think is a very important skill, is you got to start with something you share in common.
That's right, yeah.
Right? So with another woman, you know that you share something in common already. Yeah. And with another man, which is also an American man, I wasn't sure which topic should I say when that could find something that share in common.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way.
I see.
Yeah. So the new connections I made were with other women. Yeah. And I thought it was so nice that, Margaret Wheeler had 2 of her daughters running around. So and that was like so nice to see. It was, my mommy heart really appreciated, right? Because I went there kind of not knowing people. So just to be in that energy of kind of girls, kids running around and another fellow mother kind of made me feel like, okay, all right.
Right.
I'm not alone.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I feel that being a minority, you don't want to assume everything is because the majority is oppressing people, right?
Yes.
But then you sometimes you can't help to think, is that me?
Yeah.
Is that they?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's...
The thing that becomes hard to decipher is it me, or is it because I'm a woman, or is it because I'm Asian, right? Like you can kind of never pick out what's what, but there's just something there.
And then, but the thing is, it might be none of the above.
And it might be none of the above.
But
it might be, it might be that.
Yeah, but the funny thing is the majority doesn't have to filter through those questions.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a less energy involved.
Yeah.
With that. Yeah.
For sure.
So obviously you have taught yoga for many years.
Yeah. Almost 20
So you're not
years.
New for the instructing role.
Yeah. Correct.
Did it carry over to your guiding?
Oh, totally. Teaching is teaching whether you're teaching yoga or climbing.
Right.
And for me, the teaching is easy, not because I'm a great teacher, but because I'm a perpetual student. I love to learn. I think also what makes me a good teacher is I'm not necessarily what one would consider a good student or a quick learner. It takes me a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, a lot of like seeing it from other angles, getting it explained from many different perspectives, experiencing it tactilely, visually seeing like I need to learn from so many different angles that by the time I finally understand it, I understand it well. So I'm not quick. But when I get it, I feel like I really deeply get it. And I always reserve room for, staying curious and revising what I know. So, even when I teach yoga, it's always been while I'm in the role of a teacher, my student-teacher relationship is very much teamwork. We're learning from each other, we are trying things. We are trying to keep our minds open. So it's, I think as a teacher, instructor, the biggest success for me and the biggest gift I can offer to others is to make them independent yogis or independent climbers or people who are able to be their own teachers.
Awesome.
And continue to stay curious and stay motivated. So, when I teach yoga, like a lot of, back in Austin when I was teaching a lot, most of the a big majority of my classes were other teachers, and we all kind of created a space where it was very communal learning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so the teaching, instructing part is not hard for you, I would say, in the guiding.
It's not hard because I'm always a student. I kind of know where it could be challenging, right? And instead of assuming, I kind of know what it feels like to feel lost. Some people, right, like as an example, some people are like real gear nerds. They understand the technical system. They see it once and they get it and they just get it. And that's just not me, right?
So is that the most challenging part you find becoming a guide is to try to sift through all those information and be technical savvy?
Yeah, it makes me a good teacher because I'm very empathetic.
I see. Well, I mean, it's good because they say that if you can teach the material, then you know the material well. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about like the balancing.
Okay.
Balancing life.
Okay.
So, what's your like plan for like say the next couple of years so you can balance your climbing, your guiding pursuit, your whatever you're doing? Do you have other goals and all that?
So my goal, because I've been, a parent for the last 20 years, and I'm still going to continue to be a parent, but, hopefully my son is going to continue to be independent and, happily independent. And if that's the case, my personal goal is to experience more places in the world climbing while I still can, because I also don't take my health for granted, right? Like after having gone through Lyme's disease and having gone through breast cancer and
I didn't realize.
Yes. So that breast cancer was back in 2010. And then, right, like, I've been married twice. I lost my second husband. So, like, I kind of have gone through many stages of life with climbing as a young person, as a married person, as a new mother, as a widowed person, single mother. I'd like to really experience climbing in this much more freer way.
Interesting. So you went through all these life events, but climbing is still with you the whole time.
It's still with me, and right now I choose to make climbing the center of my life, because for the last 20 years it couldn't be, right? I just couldn't make it the center of my life. So
then what do you look at climbing? What do you see in climbing that's important to you?
The most important really is like the way I get to experience the outdoor with other very fun people. It's super simple, but that is kind of the bottom of it. I love the thoughtfulness of climbing. Climbing for me is like just as potent of a mental practice and a spiritual practice as yoga. Right? Because you have to be present, you have to be honest, otherwise it's it could be disastrous. It requires you to be kind of very healthy, right? And so then when I feel like I'm connected to my own body, I can connect to life and the engagement of life better, right? Like you need health to enjoy life fully.
For sure.
So for me, climbing is a bit of a spiritual practice. It's a bit of a creative practice. I love the movements in climbing. I am a movement geek. Mm-hmm. So really I love watching people climb. I also love feeling my body climb, and I love instructing movements, and today there's just like so many amazing, right, climbing coaches that nobody needs another me. But at a very kind of a much more everyday person level, I can instruct movement really well. And that to me is very empowering, right? Because the practice of yoga is first about connecting with your body first, right? So if you can be like kind, compassionate, loving to self, it becomes easy to be kind, compassionate, loving to the world around you. And kind of climbing is like the same, if you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to like be a self-flagellating climber, because that just becomes, climbing then is like no fun.
Right. Yes. So I know that there are a lot of like retreat or trip that they combine climbing and yoga together. Have you ever thought about like doing something like that?
I've done one actually long before COVID. I've done a climbing yoga retreat back in 2016, I think. It was great fun. I think one day, maybe if the opportunity should arise, I would love to do trips that incorporate, not only climbing and not only yoga, but a much more spiritual aspect of it. Because to me, again, climbing and yoga is kind of spiritual.
It is spiritual. And so, and what do you see these two disciplines complement each other then? You share a lot of their similarities.
Yeah.
And what are the differences they kind of complement each other?
The differences, on many levels, right? Like they're very complementary, but like, let's say on a very basic level, climbing is more pulling and like yoga is more pushing. So it's very complementary that way for the body. When I'm climbing and I decide to skip out on the yoga, I always kind of end up getting injured. Vice versa.
It's like the yin yang, you kind of have
it really
both of
is. Yeah, when I'm doing too much yoga and not getting time to climb, I start injuring in different ways. So for me, they've always been hand in hand. In yoga, you get to practice the art of being present in a very safe environment, right? You're not going to fall off of your mat. I mean, you might fall on your face, but the consequences are not high. You get to practice being present there. And then in climbing, you get to actually put into work the thing that you've been practicing in yoga. Is like this art of staying present with a lot of other distracting conditions, right? Because you can be scared. There's
the weather
wind,
can change. Yes.
You're maybe not feeling as confident as you were the day before. Oh, dang it, you forgot that one, that extra set of number 2 that you wish you had, but you don't. There's just so many things, and you still have to learn to
Be present.
Keep it together and be present.
And what did you mean by, if the chance present itself, you want to have a trip that's not just yoga and climbing, but in a more spiritual level? Can you elaborate?
Yeah. Okay, so I've never publicly said this to people, but I do have an end goal. And that is to have these trips where we use the outdoor vehicle and the climbing as a vehicle for connecting and having these discussions around maybe life or around relationships. Or I don't want it to sound, for it to be therapy necessarily, but essentially it's a way for people to connect deeper. And I think that because climbing tends to be very leveling, right? At some point, you can't fake it, right? And you really do come face to face with your fears or a situation. So I would love to be able to get people together kind of in a, maybe it's a campfire discussion or a post, at the end of the day discussion where we actually get to explore different subjects, right? So, and it could be a subject around, mental health, or the health of the relationships in your life, whether it's family or with your partner. And I think that leveling aspect of climbing is very valuable to that, right? You can get, let's say, for example, you can take a high-powered CEO and maybe another accountant and maybe a yoga teacher, and put them in a day of climbing, and at the end of the day they're just them.
I think it's beautiful because it's kind of your maybe I should not say goal, but your vision of your guiding.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because guiding is not just, say, summit a mountain or finishes multi-pitch or technical skills, but it can be a deeper level.
For me, the point of climbing is to connect to yourself, right? And then in the meantime, you get to connect with others and you get to connect with nature. So there's just so many advantages to really being able to reside fully in your body, mind, and spirit. Right?
Nice.
And so I'd really like to use the vehicle of outdoors and climbing so that others can experience that. And so that, right? I think when we come to that place of connecting to self, and then it's also easy to step into other people's shoes and go, you know what? Oh, I get that we're different, but I see where you're coming from. Or I just feel like we're so disconnected. Maybe this is going off on a tangent. We're so disconnected today. Nobody wants to listen to anybody, but put people around something that takes them out of their normal, habitat and their normal way of thinking, and let's see if we can explore things together, So
Definitely.
that's my end goal that I've never really
you
vocally put out in the universe.
Well, but you gotta start with somewhere. Maybe your first step is share with our listeners and everything. It's probably gonna happen.
And so to be truthful, this guiding thing for me is more of a research into
interesting, yes.
The type of people that come, the type of people that cannot come, cannot afford it. Is there a way for me to be able to offer this to people who can and who are willing to pay, so that I can turn around and take some of that and invite people who can't, and kind of bridge that gap a little bit. I'd really love to do something like that. Again, my kind of at my age, my very physical guiding days are probably not realistic. But if I know the business, I can facilitate that.
I see. Yeah, I mean, people certainly come and hire a guide for very many different reasons. And I think it could be time to think guiding a non-traditional way, or it's not just about summiting, I would say.
Yeah. And I think at the moment, that's where, the guiding business is. But I think there are people out there who might be willing to explore more.
Yeah.
And who might be willing to pay for more, right?
I would say so, because right now for guiding, when people think about guiding, it's about, have a fun day climbing some objective or a skill acquisition to learn, and then so maybe they can be more confident on their personal climbing. But then I think guiding, because the word guide can be, guidance or guiding can mean so many different things. And I think it's worth to explore the possibilities.
Yeah, I'd really love to explore a little bit beyond just the physical doing of it, and for most people that I've spoken with, sure, climbing a rock is fun, but what is the true funness about it? It's because they feel like they have touched an edge and explored a part of themselves that and confronted a part of themselves that was really uncomfortable, but then they survived. And not only did they survive, but they had a great time. Or, they didn't have a great time. They were scared, but they also felt safe. And so next time that opportunity comes again, they would be willing to, touch that edge again and be in that place of discomfort. I mean, that is all such a very spiritual practice,
For sure. Yeah, I mean, if something that happened, I would like to be involved too. And it's like pretty fun project.
Let's do it.
And then, so maybe, some of our listeners, might also have some other ideas.
Yeah.
So let's see if people want to find you and connect with you. So what's the best way?
They can reach me via Instagram. I have an Instagram account. It's Selena, SELENA _ Pang, PANG.
Okay, I'll definitely put it on my show notes, and so make sure that people can find you and connect with you.
I'm not the best in social media. I kind of try, but I do check that. I get messages through Instagram a lot, so I check that regularly, not obsessively, but every several days.
We like to be connected, but we don't want to be obsessed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for
that was fun.
This conversation. I have fun, and I like your beautiful vision.
Oh, thank you. And hopefully this is a seed that's
definitely
planted.
Because I've been thinking about guiding a lot myself, and I feel that you certainly can do a lot more, maybe branch out a little bit, do a lot more with this profession.
Yes.
So it's not just the same old.
Yeah, why not think about it a little bit differently? And at the very worst, we try a few retreats and it's like, okay, this isn't working. But, one of the things I just want to add, there's one of the things that my grandfather was an immigrant to Japan from China, right? And apparently his business had not worked out 7 times before the 8th one actually stuck.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the thing that teaches me is that failures are not failures until you've quit. They're just kind of research.
I mean, it's actually what climbing is about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's like you kind of, I don't expect this to right? Like I have to kind of test it out and actually start doing it so that it can evolve into something that really is.
I like that research, experiment and research, and then you modify a little bit and try again.
Yeah. So
right? We modify our beta and try again.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was so fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We'll make sure that our dream come true.